The harsh winds whipped across the Texas prairie as Isaac Blackwood squinted against the setting sun, his weather-worn face revealing little of the storm brewing inside him. The Clearwater station had been his last stop before heading home to a ranch that felt emptier with each passing year, but fate had other plans on this autumn evening in 1876. Isaac adjusted his worn leather hat and watched as the train pulled away, leaving behind only dust, memories, and a single figure on the platform. A woman, clearly with child, clutching a small carpet bag and looking lost in a way that went beyond mere directions. Her simple dress was travel-stained, her dark hair partially escaping from a once-neat bun, and even from a distance, Isaac could see the defeat in her shoulders. He shouldn't get involved. Lord knew he had enough troubles of his own, a struggling cattle ranch, debts piling up faster than he could pay them, and the lingering ghosts of a family that had been taken from him 3 winters ago. But something about the abandoned woman called to him, perhaps the same instinct that had him rescuing injured animals and taking in strays since he was a boy. "Madam," he called, approaching slowly as not to startle her. "Train's gone. Station's closing for the night. You waiting on someone?" She turned, and Isaac was struck by eyes the color of summer sage, rimmed red from crying but still defiant. She couldn't have been more than 22, and her condition suggested she was at least 7 months along. "No," she replied, her voice steadier than her appearance would suggest. "There's no one coming for me." Isaac nodded, noting the absence of a wedding band. "You have somewhere to go." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "If I did, would I be standing here as night falls? Name's Isaac Blackwood. I've got a ranch about 4 miles west of here. It ain't much, but there's a spare room and hot food." He wasn't sure why he was offering, but the words came out before he could stop them. The woman studied him with suspicion. "Why would you help a stranger?" "Because it's getting dark, you're in a family way, and this ain't no place for either condition." Isaac kept his voice matter-of-fact. "Stage won't come through for another 3 days, and Clearwater ain't exactly brimming with charitable souls." She hesitated, one hand protectively covering her swollen belly. "You don't know me," she finally said, her voice barely audible above the prairie wind. Isaac took a breath, feeling the weight of a decision that might change everything. "I will," he replied simply. "If you'll let me." For a long moment she just looked at him, measuring his words against whatever hardships had brought her to this moment. Finally she nodded. "Zara," she offered. "My name is Zara Kincaid." Isaac tipped his hat. "Miss Kincaid. Let's get you to somewhere warm before night properly falls." He reached for her bag, careful not to invade her space more than necessary. She relinquished it reluctantly, then followed him to his wagon, a sturdy if weathered conveyance hitched to 2 dependable draft horses. Isaac helped her up, noting how she winced slightly as she settled onto the wooden seat. He covered her with a blanket before climbing up himself and clicking to the horses. "It's not a fancy place," he warned as they pulled away from the station. "Been focusing more on keeping it running than making it pretty." Zara stared straight ahead. "I'm not looking for fancy, Mr. Blackwood. Just somewhere safe until I figure out what comes next." Isaac nodded, keeping his eyes on the road. "Then we'll start with that." The journey to Blackwood Ranch passed in silence, the rhythmic clop of hooves and occasional creak of wagon wheels the only sounds accompanying the dying light. Isaac stole glances at his unexpected passenger, noting the way she held herself rigid against the discomfort of her condition and the bumpy road. As they crested the final hill, the ranch came into view, a modest main house with a solid front porch, a large barn, and several outbuildings spread across land that rolled toward distant mountains. It wasn't grand, but it was honest, and Isaac felt the familiar mixture of pride and worry that came with being responsible for such a place. "This is it," he said unnecessarily as they approached. "Blackwood Ranch." Zara's eyes took in everything: the mended fence lines, the smoke curling from the chimney, the small garden plot beside the house. "You live here alone?" "Just me and a handful of ranch hands who bunk in the bunkhouse over yonder. They're good men. Won't bother you none." Isaac pulled the wagon to a stop before the house. My housekeeper, Mrs. Hathaway, comes in 3 days a week. She'll be here tomorrow. He helped Zara down, noticing how she swayed slightly on her feet after the long ride. Without comment, he steadied her with a hand at her elbow, then led her up the porch steps and into the house. The main room was simple but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with sturdy furniture arranged for function rather than beauty. A few books lined a shelf, and a desk in the corner held papers that spoke of the business side of ranching. This way, Isaac directed, leading her down a short hallway to a small bedroom. It's plain, but the mattress is good, and the sheets are clean. Zara stood in the doorway, taking in the narrow bed with its patchwork quilt, the small dresser, and the window that looked out toward the eastern hills. Why are you doing this? She asked suddenly, turning to face him. You don't know anything about me. I could be running from the law. I could be, are you? Isaac interrupted, his expression unreadable. Running from the law? No, she admitted. Then that's enough for tonight. He set her carpet bag on the floor. Bathrooms across the hall. Kitchen's back through the main room. Help yourself to whatever you find. I need to see to the horses, but I'll be back to fix us some supper. Zara nodded, her exhaustion finally showing through her wary facade. Thank you, she said quietly. Isaac tipped his hat again, a gesture so ingrained it came automatically. Rest if you need to, Miss Kincaid. Everything else can wait. He left her there, standing in the doorway of a room that had been empty for too long, and returned to his horses. As he unhitched them in the gathering darkness, he wondered at his own actions. 3 years of keeping to himself, of doing little more than what was needed to keep the ranch running, and now he'd brought a pregnant stranger into his home. Mrs. Hathaway would have plenty to say about that tomorrow. By the time Isaac returned to the house, the lamps had been lit, casting a warm glow through the windows. He found Zara in the kitchen, attempting to make sense of his disorganized cupboards. I thought I might help with supper, she explained, looking almost guilty. But I'm not sure where anything is. Sit down, Isaac said, gesturing to the table. You've had a long day. To his surprise, she didn't argue, easing herself into a chair with a barely concealed grimace. Isaac set about preparing a simple meal: beans, bacon, and cornbread he'd made that morning. He worked efficiently, used to cooking for himself. How far along are you? He asked as he set plates on the table. Zara's hand went to her belly. Nearly 8 months. Isaac nodded, serving the food without comment. They ate in silence for a while, until Zara spoke again. You're wondering what I'm doing traveling alone in my condition. It's not my place to ask, Isaac replied. No, but you're thinking it. Zara set down her fork. The father was a man passing through the town where I worked. He made promises. I believed them. When I told him about the baby, he disappeared. My employer let me go. My landlady turned me out. She recited the facts without self-pity. I was trying to reach my cousin in Santa Fe. Isaac listened, his face giving nothing away. And when I got to the last station, I received a telegram. She died of influenza 2 weeks ago. Zara's voice remained steady, though her hands trembled slightly. I had just enough money for a ticket to Clearwater. I thought. I don't know what I thought. So you have nowhere to go, and a baby coming, Isaac summarized. What can you do? For work, I mean. I was a schoolteacher before. I'm good with numbers. I can sew, cook, clean. Her chin lifted slightly. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Blackwood. Never suggested you were. Isaac pushed his plate away. Look, Miss Kincaid. I'm not offering charity. Truth is, this place could use a woman's touch. Mrs. Hathaway does what she can, but she's getting on in years. You need a safe place until that baby comes, and after. I need help keeping this house in order and the books straight. He met her eyes directly. Seems to me we might solve each other's problems, at least for a while. Zara studied him, wariness warring with hope. Why would you trust a stranger with your home and your accounts? Because I'm a fair judge of character, he replied. And because everyone deserves a second chance. Something in his tone made her look more closely at him. You speak from experience. Isaac stood, gathering the plates. We all have our stories, Miss Kincaid. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, if you're still interested, we can discuss terms. And if the baby comes? Then we'll handle that too. He looked out the window into the darkness. Dr. Jenkins in town is a good man. Been delivering babies in these parts for 30 years. Zara nodded slowly. You're a strange man, Mr. Blackwood. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. So I've been told. Later, after he'd shown her where everything was and retreated to his own room at the far end of the hall, Isaac sat on the edge of his bed and wondered at the turn his life had taken in a single evening. He'd spent 3 years avoiding connections, protecting himself from any more loss. Yet here he was, with a pregnant woman under his roof and a future suddenly less certain than it had been that morning. In the other room, Zara unpacked her meager belongings: 2 dresses, a hairbrush, a small box containing her teaching certificate, and a locket that had belonged to her mother. She moved slowly, her back aching from the journey and the weight of the child within her. As she prepared for bed, she caught her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser. Tired eyes, hair falling loose around her shoulders, fear barely contained beneath a veneer of determination. What have you gotten yourself into? She whispered to herself. But as she lay down on the unfamiliar bed, listening to the night sounds of a ranch settling into darkness, she felt something she hadn't expected, a small measure of peace. Morning came with the sounds of a working ranch roosters announcing the dawn, cattle lowing in the distance, men's voices calling to each other, as the day's work began. Zara woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until the events of the previous day came rushing back. She dressed carefully in her least worn dress, braided her hair, and made her way to the kitchen, determined to prove her usefulness immediately. To her surprise, Isaac was already there, coffee brewing on the stove and biscuits baking in the oven. Good morning, he said, looking up from the papers spread before him on the table. Sleep all right? Yes, thank you, Zara replied, taking in the sight of him in the morning light. Without his hat, his dark hair showed streaks of premature silver at the temples, and the lines around his eyes spoke of both laughter and hardship. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps in his early 30s. Coffee? He offered, already reaching for a cup. Please. She accepted the steaming mug gratefully. You're up early. Ranch work doesn't wait, he said with a shrug. Jenkins, my foreman, and the boys have been up since before dawn. We've got cattle to move to the south pasture today. Zara nodded, glancing at the papers. Ledgers? Isaac grimaced. Been putting off balancing them. Numbers were never my strong suit. May I? Zara asked, setting down her coffee and reaching for the books. He hesitated only briefly before sliding them toward her. Be my guest. Zara settled into a chair and began examining the entries, quickly identifying several miscalculations and noting the pattern of expenses against income. She worked silently, occasionally sipping her coffee, while Isaac removed the biscuits from the oven and set out butter and preserves. Your cattle operation is running at a loss, she finally said, looking up. But your horses are turning a profit. Isaac stared at her. How did you figure that out so quickly? It's right here in the numbers. She turned the ledger toward him, pointing to specific entries. You're spending more on feed and care for the cattle than you're making when you sell them. But these entries for the horses show a steady return. Isaac rubbed his jaw, considering her words. The drought last year hit us hard. Had to buy feed when the pastures dried up. Yes, but even before that, the margin was thin. Zara hesitated. I don't mean to overstep. No, go on, Isaac encouraged. Fresh eyes might see what I've been missing. Well, it seems to me you might do better to focus more on the horses and scale back the cattle operation. She flipped through more pages. Especially since you seem to have a reputation for good stock. There are repeat buyers noted here. Isaac looked impressed despite himself. You got all that from an hour with my books? I told you I was good with numbers, Zara replied, a hint of pride in her voice. It was why I became a teacher. Numbers don't lie, and they don't judge. Before Isaac could respond, the back door opened, and an older woman entered, arms laden with baskets. She stopped short at the sight of Zara. Mrs. Hathaway, Isaac said, rising. This is Miss Zara Kincaid. She'll be staying with us for a while. The housekeeper's eyes widened as she took in Zara's condition, then narrowed as she looked to Isaac. Is that so? Miss Kincaid needed a place to stay, and I need help with the house and the books, Isaac explained calmly. It seemed a good arrangement for both of us. Mrs. Hathaway set down her baskets with deliberate care. I see. Her tone made it clear she saw quite a bit more than was being said. Well, Miss Kincaid, I hope you'll be comfortable here. Thank you, Zara replied, meeting the older woman's gaze steadily. I appreciate Mr. Blackwood's kindness. Mrs. Hathaway sniffed. Kindness, indeed. She turned to Isaac. A word, if you please, Mr. Blackwood. Isaac nodded, following her into the pantry. Zara couldn't hear their conversation, but the housekeeper's hushed, urgent tones carried through the door, along with occasional low responses from Isaac. When they emerged a few minutes later, Mrs. Hathaway's expression was resigned but not hostile. Well, Miss Kincaid, it seems you're to be part of the household, she said briskly. I come Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to clean and do the laundry. If you're to be keeping the books, you'd best know that payday for the hands is the first Saturday of the month. Thank you, Mrs. Hathaway, Zara replied, recognizing the tentative acceptance being offered. I'll try not to disrupt your routines. The older woman nodded. See that you don't. She turned to Isaac. I'll start on the linens. Those boys tracked mud all through the back hallway again. As she bustled away, Isaac gave Zara an apologetic look. She's been with the ranch since my father's time. Practically raised me after my mother died. She's protective of you, Zara observed. She has every right to be suspicious of a pregnant stranger suddenly appearing in your home. Mrs. Hathaway's bark is worse than her bite, Isaac assured her. She'll come around once she sees you're not here to cause trouble. And am I? Zara asked quietly. Here to cause trouble? Isaac held her gaze. Are you? No, she answered honestly. I just want somewhere safe to have this baby and figure out what comes next. Then we understand each other. Isaac nodded toward the ledgers. Keep looking through those. If you have suggestions for improving things, I'm all ears. I need to head out to help with the cattle, but I'll be back for the midday meal. After he left, Zara continued working on the books, making notes and organizing the scattered receipts into a more coherent system. She was so absorbed in the task that she barely noticed Mrs. Hathaway moving around the house, cleaning and arranging things with the efficiency of long practice. It was nearly noon when the housekeeper reappeared in the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. You still at those books, girl? Zara looked up, blinking. Yes, I wanted to get everything in order. Mrs. Hathaway studied her for a moment. How far along are you? Almost 8 months. The older woman nodded. Any complications? No, Zara replied. The baby moves plenty. Everything seems normal. Good. We're a long way from proper medical care out here. Mrs. Hathaway began pulling out ingredients for the midday meal. You know anything about the father? Zara stiffened. Enough to know he wants nothing to do with us. Humph, men. Mrs. Hathaway shook her head. And what about Mr. Blackwood? What's he to you? A kind stranger, Zara answered carefully. Nothing more. See that it stays that way, the housekeeper advised, her voice gentler than her words. That man's had enough heartache to last several lifetimes. Zara's curiosity was piqued, but she knew better than to press. Instead, she changed the subject. May I help with the meal? Can you make a decent stew? I can. Mrs. Hathaway handed her a knife and pointed to a basket of vegetables. Then start chopping. They worked together in a not entirely uncomfortable silence, until Mrs. Hathaway spoke again. He lost his wife and daughter 3 winters ago. Influenza. Same as took my Thomas 20 years back. Zara's hand stilled on the knife. I'm sorry. Not telling you to make you sorry. Telling you so you understand. The older woman kneaded dough with practiced movements. Isaac Blackwood was a different man before that. Laughed easy. Had plans. Afterward. She shook her head. It's like part of him went into the ground with them. Why are you telling me this? Zara asked quietly. Because whatever brought you here, whatever your story is, don't you go bringing more pain to that man. Mrs. Hathaway's eyes were sharp but not unkind. He's had his share. I don't intend to hurt anyone, Zara assured her. I just need somewhere safe until the baby comes. And after? The housekeeper pressed. What then? Zara looked down at her swollen belly. I don't know yet. I'll find work somewhere, a place of our own. Mrs. Hathaway studied her for a long moment. We'll see, she finally said, returning to her bread making. Time has a way of changing plans. When Isaac returned for the midday meal, he found the 2 women working together, as if they'd done so for years, the kitchen filled with the aroma of beef stew and fresh bread. He paused in the doorway, struck by the domesticity of the scene, and the strange pang it caused in his chest. Something smells good, he said, removing his hat and hanging it on the peg by the door. Mrs. Hathaway looked up. Miss Kincaid knows her way around a kitchen, I'll give her that. Coming from the housekeeper, it was high praise indeed. Isaac washed up at the sink, then joined them at the table, where Zara was setting out bowls and spoons. How are the books coming along? I've made some progress, she replied. I'd like to show you after the meal, if you have time. He nodded, accepting a bowl of stew and a thick slice of bread. The 3 ate together, with Mrs. Hathaway filling the silence with updates on town gossip and observations about which of the ranch hands needed their clothes mended most desperately. After the meal, the housekeeper shooed them away from the cleanup. Go on with your business talk. I've got things handled here. Isaac led Zara to his small office off the main room, where she had arranged the ledgers and papers into neat stacks. She sat carefully in the chair he offered, then began explaining her findings. Your cattle operation isn't failing, exactly, but it's vulnerable to weather conditions and market fluctuations, she said, pointing to the relevant figures. The horses, though, you have something special there. The prices you're getting are well above average, and buyers are coming back. Isaac leaned against the desk, arms crossed as he listened. My father was the cattle man. The horses were my mother's passion. After she died, he kept them mostly out of sentiment. But you've built on what she started, Zara observed. These bloodlines, the training methods noted here, that's your work, isn't it? He nodded, a hint of pride showing through his usual reserve. Always had a way with horses. Seems they understand me better than most people do. If you shifted more resources to the horse breeding and training, you could potentially double your income within 2 years, Zara suggested. Keep enough cattle to diversify your risk, but focus on what's clearly your strength. Isaac studied her for a long moment. You figured all this out from one morning with my disorganized books? Zara felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. Numbers tell stories, Mr. Blackwood. I just listened to them. Isaac, he said suddenly, if we're going to be working together, you might as well use my given name. Isaac, she repeated, testing the sound of it. Then you must call me Zara. Something shifted in the air between them, not quite intimacy, but a step away from the careful formality they'd maintained. Isaac straightened, breaking the moment. I need to get back to the herd, he said. But I'll think on what you've said. If you're up to it, maybe you could start setting up a proper bookkeeping system. I'd be happy to, Zara replied. It's good to feel useful again. As Isaac headed back out, he passed Mrs. Hathaway in the hallway. The housekeeper gave him a knowing look that he chose to ignore. He had cattle to move and a ranch to run, no time to dwell on the unexpected warmth he'd felt in his office or the ways Zara's eyes lit up when she talked about numbers and possibilities. The days settled into a rhythm as October stretched toward November. Each morning, Zara rose early to help with breakfast before Isaac and the hands headed out for the day's work. She spent her mornings organizing the ranch's accounts, creating a system that would make it easy to track expenses and income moving forward. In the afternoons, she often helped Mrs. Hathaway with household tasks, learning the rhythms and routines of the ranch. Isaac was often gone from sunup to sundown, but they shared meals when he was at the house, their conversations gradually extending beyond ranch business to books they'd read, places they'd seen, and carefully edited versions of their pasts. Zara spoke of her childhood in Missouri, her father's early death, and her determination to become educated despite limited means. Isaac shared stories of growing up on the ranch, learning the land from his father and the love of horses from his mother. Neither mentioned the losses that had shaped them: her betrayal by the baby's father, his grief over his family. Those wounds remained private, though acknowledged in the silences between words. A week into Zara's stay, Mrs. Hathaway arrived with several parcels. "Ordered these from the mercantile," she announced, setting them on Zara's bed. "Can't have you wearing the same 2 dresses until the baby comes." Zara opened the packages to find several practical but well-made maternity dresses, along with the materials to make more. "Mrs. Hathaway, I can't accept these. I have no way to pay, already settled," the housekeeper interrupted. "Mr. Blackwood," Isaac said, "to put it against your wages." "My wages?" Zara echoed. "For the bookkeeping," Mrs. Hathaway explained, as if it were obvious. "He's not one for charity, our Isaac. If you're working, you'll be paid." She eyed Zara's expanding middle. "Though most of it's going into an account for after the baby comes." Zara's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "That's very thoughtful." Mrs. Hathaway's expression softened. "He's a good man, Isaac Blackwood. Better than most." "Yes," Zara agreed quietly. "I'm beginning to see that." That evening, when Isaac returned from a long day of working with a new colt, he found Zara on the front porch, wrapped in a shawl against the autumn chill, gazing at the sunset painting the western sky in vivid oranges and purples. "Thank you for the dresses," she said as he joined her, leaning against the porch railing. He nodded, seemingly embarrassed. "Mrs. Hathaway mentioned you might need more things. Practical matter, that's all. Still, it was kind." They stood in companionable silence, watching as the colors deepened and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "I love this time of day," Zara confessed. "Everything seems to pause, just for a moment, before night truly falls." Isaac glanced at her profile, softened in the fading light. "My mother used to say that sunset was when the world held its breath." Zara smiled, one hand resting on her belly. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. Isaac's voice held a warmth he rarely allowed himself. "You'd have liked her." She had no patience for pretense, but a heart big enough for every stray and lost soul that crossed her path. "Is that what I am?" Zara asked softly. "A lost soul?" Isaac met her eyes. "Are you?" Before she could answer, the baby kicked forcefully, making her gasp. Without thinking, she reached for Isaac's hand and placed it on her belly. "Feel that? Someone has opinions about our conversation." Isaac froze at the contact, his expression a complex mixture of wonder and something like pain as he felt the strong movements beneath his palm. For a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. Then he gently withdrew his hand. "Strong," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "That's good." Zara immediately regretted her impulsive action. "I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking." "No need to apologize." Isaac straightened, putting a careful distance between them. "It's getting cold out here. You should go in." "Isaac. Good night, Zara." He tipped his hat and stepped off the porch, heading toward the barn without looking back. Zara watched him go, cursing her thoughtlessness. Mrs. Hathaway had told her about his lost child. How could she have been so insensitive? Shivering now in the deepening chill, she went inside, the moment of connection shattered by the ghosts that stood between them. In the barn, Isaac busied himself with unnecessary tasks, checking horses that had already been fed and settled for the night. His hand still tingled where it had rested on Zara's belly, the strong kick of new life an echo of memories he tried to bury. Ellie had been just as active before she was born, keeping Sarah awake at night with her acrobatics. Isaac had spent hours with his hand pressed to his wife's growing belly, talking to his daughter before she even entered the world. And then, in what seemed like the blink of an eye, they were both gone, leaving him with nothing but an empty house and a future he no longer wanted. "Boss?" Jenkins, his foreman, appeared in the barn doorway. "Everything all right?" Isaac straightened, pushing the memories away. "Fine. Just checking on that new colt." Jenkins nodded, though his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "Mrs. Hathaway sent over some stew. It's in the bunkhouse if you're hungry." "Thanks, Jenkins. I'll be along shortly." After the foreman left, Isaac leaned against the stall door, exhaling slowly. He'd been careful these past 3 years, keeping his distance from anything that might make him vulnerable again. But Zara Kincaid had somehow slipped past his defenses, bringing with her memories and feelings he'd thought safely buried. It was dangerous ground, and Isaac knew better than to tread there. She needed a safe place to have her baby, nothing more. He needed help with the books and the house. Their arrangement was practical, temporary. It had to stay that way. Yet, as he finally headed toward the bunkhouse, he couldn't shake the memory of her smile in the fading light, or the wonder of new life moving beneath his hand. November arrived with a bitter cold snap that had everyone on the ranch working double time to protect the livestock. Zara watched from the kitchen window as Isaac and his men moved cattle to sheltered areas and reinforced the barn against the coming winter. "Storm's brewing," Mrs. Hathaway observed, joining her at the window. "First big one of the season, by the look of those clouds." Zara nodded, one hand absently rubbing her lower back. The baby had dropped lower in the past week, making walking increasingly uncomfortable but breathing slightly easier. Dr. Jenkins, who had made a special trip out to the ranch to check on her, estimated she had 3 to 4 weeks left before the birth. "Will they get everything secured in time?" she asked, watching as Isaac directed the men with the efficiency of long experience. "They always do." Mrs. Hathaway gave her a shrewd look. "Your back troubling you?" "A little," Zara admitted. "It comes and goes." The housekeeper studied her. "Any other discomforts? Tightening across your belly? Pressure down low?" "Some pressure, yes. But Dr. Jenkins said that's normal at this stage." "It is," Mrs. Hathaway agreed. "But you let me know if anything changes. Babies first don't always give much warning before they decide to make their appearance." The storm hit that night, howling winds driving sleet against the windows and rattling the shutters. Zara lay awake, listening to the elements rage outside while the baby shifted restlessly within her. Occasional twinges in her back and abdomen kept her from finding a comfortable position. Near midnight, a particularly strong pain had her gasping, hands clutching the quilt as she waited for it to pass. When it did, she got up carefully, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders before making her way to the kitchen for a glass of water. To her surprise, Isaac was there, stoking the fire and the stove. He looked up as she entered. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "The storm," she explained, not wanting to worry him with her discomfort. "And this little one is doing somersaults." Isaac nodded, returning to the fire. Things had been slightly awkward between them since the evening on the porch, both careful to maintain a polite distance. "Wanted to make sure the house stays warm. These old walls can let in the cold when the wind gets like this." Zara poured herself a glass of water, then sat at the table, watching as he worked. Another pain gripped her, and she couldn't completely hide her wince. Isaac noticed immediately. "Are you all right?" "Fine," she assured him. Just some discomfort. Normal at this stage, Dr. Jenkins said. He didn't look convinced. Should I wake Mrs. Hathaway? She's staying in the guest room tonight because of the storm. No, really. There's no need to disturb her. Zara took a sip of water. Tell me about the horses instead. Did you get them all settled before the storm hit? Isaac hesitated, then seemed to accept her change of subject. Yes, they're all secure. That new colt gave us some trouble, though. Spirited like his dam. The black mare? Midnight? You've been paying attention. Isaac sounded pleased. Yes, Midnight. Best bloodlines in the territory. Her foals always fetch top dollar. Zara smiled, genuinely interested despite another twinge of pain. What makes her special? Intelligence for one thing. Speed for another. But mostly it's her heart. Isaac's face softened as he spoke of the horse. She gives everything, holds nothing back. In a race, in training, with her foals. You admire that, Zara observed. I do. He met her eyes across the kitchen. Commitment matters. Either you're all in, or you shouldn't bother starting. The simple statement hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond horses. Zara felt a flush rise to her cheeks under his steady gaze. Another pain came, sharper this time, making her inhale sharply. Isaac was beside her in an instant. That's not normal discomfort, he said, his voice brooking no argument. How long has this been happening? On and off all day, Zara admitted reluctantly. But they weren't this strong before. How often? I don't know. Every 20 minutes or so? But it's too early. Dr. Jenkins said another 3 weeks at least. Isaac's expression was grim. Babies don't always follow doctors' schedules. I'm getting Mrs. Hathaway. Before Zara could protest, he was gone, returning moments later with the housekeeper, who had clearly dressed hastily. How far apart are the pains? Mrs. Hathaway asked without preamble, placing a practiced hand on Zara's abdomen. I'm not sure. I wasn't timing them. As if on cue, another contraction seized her, stronger than before. Mrs. Hathaway noted the time on the kitchen clock, her expression becoming more serious. Let's get you back to bed so I can check you properly, she said, helping Zara to her feet. Isaac, put water on to boil, then go wake Jenkins. We'll need him to ride for the doctor if there's a break in the storm. Zara clutched Mrs. Hathaway's arm as they made their way back to her bedroom. It's too early, she repeated, fear creeping into her voice. Babies come when they come, the housekeeper replied calmly. And you're not the first woman to give birth before her time. Now let's see what's happening. After a brief examination, Mrs. Hathaway's expression was composed but concerned. You're in labor, all right. Still early stages, but progressing. The baby will be all right? Zara asked, gripping the older woman's hand. God willing, Mrs. Hathaway answered honestly. It's a few weeks early, but not dangerously so. The real concern is this storm. I doubt the doctor can make it through until it passes. Zara closed her eyes briefly. So it will be just us. I've delivered babies before, Mrs. Hathaway assured her. And Isaac's steady in a crisis. We'll manage. As if summoned by his name, Isaac appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully controlled. Water's boiling. Jenkins is ready to ride out as soon as there's a break in the weather. Mrs. Hathaway nodded. Good. For now, bring clean linens and more lanterns. It's going to be a long night. The hours that followed blurred together for Zara, pain that built and receded like waves, Mrs. Hathaway's steady presence, and Isaac's unexpected attentiveness. He brought water, built up the fire, and held her hand through the worst contractions, his strong fingers providing an anchor when the pain threatened to overwhelm her. Talk to me, she gasped during a particularly intense contraction. Distract me? Isaac, looking somewhat at a loss, began telling her about his first horse, a stubborn pinto named Patches that had taught him patience and perseverance. His deep voice washed over her, providing a counterpoint to the pain. He bucked me off more times than I could count, he recalled. My father wanted to sell him, said he was too willful. But my mother insisted I keep trying. A small smile touched his lips. She said the best things in life never come easy. Zara managed a weak laugh that turned into a groan as another contraction took hold. She sounds very wise. She was, Isaac agreed, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. You remind me of her sometimes. That same quiet determination. Before Zara could respond, Mrs. Hathaway returned from checking on the storm. No change out there, she reported. But things are progressing in here. It won't be much longer now. True to her prediction, within 2 hours Zara's labor intensified dramatically. The contractions came faster, harder, leaving little time to recover between them. Mrs. Hathaway positioned herself at the foot of the bed, issuing calm but firm instructions. Isaac, get behind her, help her sit up, she directed. Zara, when the next pain comes, you bear down with all your might. Isaac hesitated only briefly before climbing onto the bed behind Zara, allowing her to lean back against his chest. His arms came around her, providing support as she prepared for the next contraction. You can do this, he murmured in her ear. You're the strongest woman I know. Zara wanted to tell him that wasn't true, that she was terrified, that she had never felt less strong in her life. But then the next contraction seized her, and all she could do was grip his hands and push as Mrs. Hathaway counted steadily. Good girl, the housekeeper encouraged. I can see the head. One more big push. Gathering the last of her strength, Zara bore down, a cry tearing from her throat as she felt the baby finally slide free. There was a moment of terrifying silence, and then a thin, outraged wail filled the room. A girl, Mrs. Hathaway announced, quickly wrapping the tiny infant in a clean towel. Small, but she's got good lungs on her. Exhausted, Zara sagged back against Isaac, tears streaming down her face. She's all right? See for yourself. Mrs. Hathaway placed the swaddled newborn on Zara's chest. She's perfect. Zara looked down at her daughter's tiny, red face, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it took her breath away. Hello, little one, she whispered. You're early. Isaac remained behind her, his presence solid and reassuring. Zara was acutely aware of his breath against her hair, his heartbeat against her back. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. He cleared his throat, his voice rough with emotion. What will you call her? Zara hadn't allowed herself to think that far ahead, afraid to hope too much for a future that had seemed so uncertain. But now, cradled in Isaac's arms with her daughter safe against her heart, a name came to her. Hope, she decided. Her name is Hope. Mrs. Hathaway nodded approvingly. A good name. Strong. As the storm continued to rage outside, the three of them remained in the warm room, a new life binding them together in ways none could have anticipated when Zara had first stepped off that train. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by snow and ice. Jenkins rode out at first light to fetch the doctor, who arrived shortly after noon to check on mother and baby. You're a lucky young woman, Dr. Jenkins told Zara after examining Hope. She's small but healthy. No signs of distress despite coming early. Thanks to Mrs. Hathaway, Zara said gratefully. And Isaac. The doctor nodded. Good people to have around in a crisis. He packed up his bag. Rest as much as you can. The baby will keep you busy enough once you're up and about. After he left, Isaac came to check on them, hovering awkwardly in the doorway as if unsure of his welcome now that the emergency had passed. Doctor says she's doing well, Zara told him, cradling Hope against her shoulder. Would you like to hold her? Isaac's eyes widened slightly. I don't know if that's please, Zara interrupted gently. You helped bring her into the world. You should hold her at least once. After a moment's hesitation, he approached the bed and carefully accepted the tiny bundle. Hope squirmed slightly before settling against his broad chest, one small hand escaping the blanket to curl reflexively around his finger. The expression that crossed Isaac's face nearly broke Zara's heart. Wonder and joy mingled with a profound grief he couldn't quite hide. He stood very still, looking down at the infant with a tenderness that made Zara's throat tighten. "She's perfect," he said softly, echoing Mrs. Hathaway's words from the night before. "You did good, Zara." "We did," she corrected. "I couldn't have done it without you." Isaac carefully returned Hope to her mother's arms, his fingertips lingering briefly on the baby's downy head. "You both should rest. I'll check on you later." As he turned to leave, Zara called after him. "Isaac? Thank you. Not just for last night, but for everything since that day at the station." He paused in the doorway, his back to her. "Like I said that day, everyone deserves a second chance." The weeks following Hope's birth brought a new rhythm to the ranch. Despite Mrs. Hathaway's insistence that she rest, Zara was up and about within days, unable to remain idle. She kept Hope with her always, a sling fashioned from one of Isaac's old shirts allowing her to carry the baby while she worked on the accounts or helped with light household tasks. Isaac kept a careful distance, maintaining the role of concerned landlord and employer without overstepping. Yet Zara often caught him watching them, his expression thoughtful, when he thought she wouldn't notice. As December approached, bringing with it the prospect of the Christmas season, Zara found herself facing the uncertainty of her future once more. She was regaining her strength, Hope was thriving, and the temporary arrangement she had made with Isaac would soon need to be reconsidered. One evening, after Hope had been fed and settled in the cradle Jenkins and the ranch hands had crafted for her, Zara found Isaac in his office, reviewing the new bookkeeping system she had implemented. "May I speak with you?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, setting aside the ledger. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "Yes." Zara entered, taking the chair across from his desk. "I wanted to discuss our arrangement." Isaac's expression became guarded. "What about it? I've been here almost 2 months now. Hope is doing well, and I'm fully recovered." Zara clasped her hands in her lap to hide their slight trembling. "I need to start thinking about what comes next." "There's no rush," Isaac said quickly. "Winter's setting in. Not a good time to be traveling with a newborn." "I know, but I can't impose on your kindness indefinitely." Zara met his eyes directly. "You've done more than enough already." Isaac leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Where would you go?" The question hung in the air between them. Zara had been pondering it for days, weighing her limited options. "I thought perhaps Denver. It's a growing city. There might be opportunities for a woman with bookkeeping skills." "And a baby?" Isaac's voice was gentle but pointed. "How would you manage?" "Other women do," Zara replied, lifting her chin slightly. "I'm not the first to raise a child alone." "No, but why should you have to?" Isaac stood, moving to the window that overlooked the snow-covered yard. "The books are in better order than they've ever been. The house runs smoothly. You've proven your worth here a dozen times over." Hope stirred in her cradle, making small snuffling noises before settling again. Isaac turned, his gaze moving from the baby to Zara. "Stay," he said simply. "Not just for the winter. Stay permanently." Zara's heart quickened. "As your bookkeeper?" Isaac took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "As more than that, if you're willing." "Isaac, I'm not proposing love or romance," he clarified quickly. "I'm not sure I have that left in me. But I'm offering partnership, security for you and Hope. A home." Zara stood, confused by the conflicting emotions his offer stirred. "You want to marry me out of kindness?" "Not just kindness," Isaac replied, taking a step toward her. "Respect. Admiration. We work well together, Zara. We could build something good here, for Hope and for the ranch. A marriage of convenience," she said softly. "An honest arrangement between friends," he countered. "With the potential for more, perhaps, in time." Zara turned away, needing a moment to collect her thoughts. The offer was more than generous security for herself and Hope, a home on a ranch that was beginning to prosper under their joint efforts. And Isaac was a good man, kind and honorable in ways the baby's father had never been. But a part of her, a part she had thought long buried under pragmatism and necessity, ached for something more than convenience and practicality. "I need time to think," she finally said. Isaac nodded, disappointment flickering briefly across his face before his usual composure returned. "Of course. It's a big decision. Take all the time you need." That night, after Hope's midnight feeding, Zara stood by the window, looking out at the moonlit landscape. The ranch was beautiful in the winter, the snow softening its rugged edges, the distant mountains standing sentinel against the star-filled sky. She could be happy here. She already was, in many ways. Isaac's quiet strength had become a foundation she relied upon, his dry humor a bright spot in her days. And she had seen how he looked at Hope when he thought no one was watching with a tenderness that belied his claim of having no love left to give. But could she marry a man who offered partnership without passion? Who spoke of respect and security but not of love? Her mind drifted to the night of Hope's birth, to the feel of Isaac's arms around her, his voice in her ear telling her she was strong. To the wonder on his face when he held her daughter for the first time. To 100 small moments of connection that had grown between them over the weeks. Perhaps, she thought, love could grow from such seeds, given time and nurturing. Perhaps it already had, on her part at least, though she had been too afraid to name it. December brought preparations for Christmas. The first Blackwood ranch had properly celebrated in 3 years. Mrs. Hathaway baked cookies and pies, filling the house with the scents of cinnamon and nutmeg. Jenkins and the hands cut a pine tree from the north ridge, setting it up in the main room where Zara decorated it with paper stars and strings of dried berries. Isaac watched these preparations with a bemused tolerance that gradually gave way to cautious participation. One evening, he returned from town with a small package, which he handed to Zara without ceremony. "For the tree," he explained as she unwrapped a delicate glass angel. "My mother always said a tree needs an angel to watch over it." Zara's eyes misted as she carefully placed the ornament at the top of the tree. "It's beautiful, Isaac." "Thank you." He shrugged, embarrassed by her gratitude. "Just seemed right to have it there again." That night, after everyone had retired, Zara found herself unable to sleep. Hope was peaceful for once, her tiny chest rising and falling in the rhythm of deep slumber. Wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, Zara made her way to the kitchen for a cup of tea. She was surprised to find Isaac there, seated at the table with a mug of coffee and a small wooden box open before him. "I'm sorry," she said, starting to retreat. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not," he assured her. "Come in. Kettle's still hot." Zara prepared her tea, then hesitantly joined him at the table. In the box, she could see a collection of small items: a locket, a child's hair ribbon, a tiny pair of knitted booties. "Sarah and Ellie," Isaac said quietly, answering her unspoken question. "They're things. I keep them put away most of the time." "Why tonight?" Zara asked gently. Isaac's fingers brushed the ribbon. Christmas was Ellie's favorite. She was only 4, but she loved everything about it: the tree, the songs, the stories. Zara reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Tell me about them." For a moment, she thought he might refuse, retreat back behind the walls he had built around his grief. Then he turned his hand, clasping hers. "Sarah was a town girl. Her father was the banker in Clearwater. Everyone thought she'd marry some businessman or lawyer, not a dusty rancher." A faint smile touched his lips. "But she loved this land as much as I did. Had all sorts of ideas for making the ranch prosper. Most of them good ones, too." "She sounds remarkable," Zara said. "She was." Isaac's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the gesture unconscious but intimate. "And Ellie was her spitting image: same auburn hair, same stubborn chin. Same way of looking at you, like she could see right through any nonsense." "How did you meet Sarah?" "Church social." I was 22, too serious for my own good according to my mother. Sarah brought me a piece of pie and told me my hat was ridiculous. The memory brought a genuine smile to his face. Married her 6 months later. Zara smiled at the image. Love at first sight? For me it was, Isaac admitted. Took her a little longer to come around to the idea of being a rancher's wife. But once she did, he shook his head. We had 8 good years together. Not nearly enough, but good ones. And now? Zara asked softly. After all this time, what do you think she would want for you? Isaac looked up, meeting her eyes across the table. She'd kick my backside for wallowing so long, that's for certain. Sarah wasn't one for self-pity. And she'd tell me life's for the living. Isaac's grip on her hand tightened slightly. That holding on to grief doesn't honor the dead, it just wastes the time the living have left. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds the ticking of the clock and the occasional pop from the banked fire in the stove. Have you thought more about my proposal? Isaac finally asked, his voice carefully neutral. Zara nodded. I have. And I can't accept it, she said gently. Not as it stands. Isaac withdrew his hand, his expression closing off. I understand. You need more time, or perhaps, no. Zara interrupted. That's not it at all. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I can't marry you for convenience or security or partnership alone, Isaac. Not because those things aren't valuable, they are. But because it wouldn't be honest. I don't understand, he said, confusion evident in his face. It wouldn't be honest because I'm falling in love with you, Zara confessed, her cheeks flushing. And I won't enter a marriage where I'm feeling something you're not. Isaac stared at her, clearly stunned by her declaration. Zara, please let me finish. She held up a hand. I don't expect you to feel the same way. I know your heart has been through too much. But I need you to understand why I can't accept a marriage of convenience. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. Isaac stood abruptly, pacing to the window. For a long moment he stared out into the darkness, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. When Sarah and Ellie died, he finally said, his voice low and rough, I thought that was it for me. That I'd live out my days alone on this ranch, just going through the motions until it was my time to join them. He turned, his eyes finding hers. And then you stepped off that train, looking lost and defiant all at once, and something inside me woke up. Zara's breath caught. Isaac. I told myself it was just kindness, then practicality. That you needed help and I needed a bookkeeper. He shook his head. But it was more than that from the beginning, wasn't it? For me it was, Zara admitted. Even when I was trying not to feel anything beyond gratitude. Isaac crossed the room, kneeling beside her chair so they were at eye level. I'm not good with words, Zara. Never have been. But when I asked you to stay, to marry me, it wasn't just about convenience or practicality. His hand reached up to touch her cheek. It was because the thought of you and hope leaving tore something open inside me that I thought was long dead. Are you saying, I'm saying I love you? He interrupted, the words rushing out as if he feared his courage might fail. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you see possibilities where I saw only problems. I love how you are with Hope, and with the ranch hands, and even with Mrs. Hathaway. And I'm terrified of it because the last time I loved like this, I lost everything. Tears filled Zara's eyes. Oh, Isaac. So yes, I offered partnership and security because those things I know I can promise. His thumb brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. But what I want, what I'm hoping for, is so much more than that. Zara placed her hand over his, turning her face to press a kiss to his palm. Then asked me again. Asked me the right question. Isaac's eyes, usually so guarded, were open and vulnerable now. Zara Kincaid, will you marry me? Not for convenience or practicality, but because somehow, against all odds, we found each other when we both needed it most? Yes, she whispered, her heart so full she could barely speak. Yes, I will. He drew her to her feet and into his arms, his embrace gentle but possessive. When he kissed her, it was tentative at first, as if he were remembering how after years of forgetting. Then, as she responded, it deepened into something that held both promise and passion. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise it will be easy, he warned. I've spent 3 years building walls. They won't come down overnight. I don't need easy, Zara assured him. I just need real. And this feels more real than anything I've known in a very long time. Isaac smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. Then we'll figure it out together. Day by day. As if on cue, Hope's cry echoed from the bedroom. Zara laughed softly. Speaking of day by day. Go on, Isaac said, releasing her reluctantly. I'll be here when you're done. Promise? She asked, suddenly needing the reassurance. He kissed her once more, quickly but firmly. Promise. For as long as you'll have me. That might be a very long time, Mr. Blackwood, Zara warned, her eyes shining with happiness. I'm counting on it, Miss Kincaid, he replied. I'm counting on it. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold, the winter sun casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. In the main room of the Blackwood ranch house, a small gathering had assembled. Isaac and Zara, Hope sleeping peacefully in her cradle, Mrs. Hathaway fussing with the holiday meal, and Jenkins and the ranch hands shuffling somewhat awkwardly in their Sunday best. Friends, Isaac began, his deep voice drawing everyone's attention. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a while since this house saw a proper Christmas celebration. He glanced at Zara, drawing strength from her encouraging smile. But it seems fitting that we're all here together now, because I have an announcement to make. He reached for Zara's hand, drawing her to his side. Miss Kincaid has done me the great honor of agreeing to become my wife. A chorus of congratulations erupted, with Mrs. Hathaway wiping suspiciously at her eyes and Jenkins clapping Isaac firmly on the shoulder. The ranch hands offered their good wishes with varying degrees of eloquence, clearly pleased for their boss despite their discomfort with emotional displays. When's the wedding? Mrs. Hathaway wanted to know, already mentally rearranging her schedule to accommodate preparations. New Year's Day, Zara replied, squeezing Isaac's hand. No sense in waiting. No sense at all, Isaac agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a flurry of activity. Word spread quickly through the surrounding countryside, and neighbors who had seen little of Isaac since his bereavement appeared with gifts and offers of help. The small church in Clearwater was prepared, a simple white dress was altered for Zara, and Mrs. Hathaway outdid herself planning a wedding feast. Throughout it all, Isaac and Zara found moments to be alone together, learning the contours of this new relationship. They talked late into the night after Hope was settled, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for their future. Isaac spoke more freely of Sarah and Ellie, finding that sharing memories with Zara somehow made them less painful to carry. Zara confided her fears about motherhood and her hopes for Hope's future. And they learned each other through touch as well, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. Isaac discovered that Zara's laughter came more easily when he kissed the sensitive spot just below her ear. Zara found that running her fingers through Isaac's hair could make him close his eyes in pleasure like a contented cat. They agreed to wait until after the wedding to fully express their passion, both wanting that moment to be the start of their life together in every sense. But the anticipation built between them, a sweet tension that made every touch, every glance, charged with promise. On New Year's Eve, the night before their wedding, they stood together on the porch, watching as the hands set off a few celebratory firecrackers in the yard. Hope was asleep inside, Mrs. Hathaway keeping watch over her. Having second thoughts? Isaac asked, noting Zara's pensive expression. She shook her head. Not about marrying you. Never that. She leaned into his side, fitting perfectly under his arm. Just thinking about how much has changed in such a short time. 3 months ago, I was alone and desperate, with no idea what the future held. And now? Zara smiled up at him. Now I'm still not sure what the future holds, but I know I'm not facing it alone. That makes all the difference. Isaac tightened his arm around her. I was thinking something similar. About how a chance meeting at a train station changed everything. Do you believe in fate, Isaac? He considered the question seriously. I don't know. After Sarah and Ellie died, I couldn't make sense of it. Couldn't see how there could be any purpose or plan in such loss. He looked down at her, his expression softening. But then you appeared, and hope came into the world, and suddenly I could see possibilities again. So maybe there is something guiding us, even when we can't see the path ahead. I'd like to think so, Zara said softly. That perhaps all the wrong turns and heartaches were somehow leading us to each other. Isaac bent to kiss her, a gentle meeting of lips that held both tenderness and promise. Whatever brought us together, I'm grateful for it. And for you. As am I, Zara replied. For the man who saw a desperate woman on a platform and said, I will. The new year, and their wedding day, dawned bright and clear, as if the heavens themselves approved of the union. The small church in Clearwater was filled with neighbors, ranch hands, and the few friends Isaac had maintained through his grief. Mrs. Hathaway sat in the front pew, Hope cradled in her arms, the baby dressed in a christening gown that had been hastily altered from one of Isaac's mother's treasured linens. When Zara appeared at the back of the church, a simple bouquet of winter greenery in her hands, Isaac felt his breath catch. She wore a dress of ivory satin, modest but beautifully fitted to her slender form. Her dark hair was arranged in loose curls beneath a short veil, and her eyes, when they met his across the church, held a joy that mirrored his own. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. They had written their own vows, simple declarations of love and commitment that acknowledged both the unexpectedness of their union and their determination to build a life together. Zara, Isaac said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. You came into my life when I thought the best parts of me were long buried. You showed me that grief doesn't have to be the end of the story, that there can be new beginnings even after the deepest loss. I promise to cherish you and hope, to be the husband and father you both deserve, and to never take for granted the gift you've given me by choosing to share your life with mine. Zara's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she spoke her own vows. Isaac, you offered shelter when I had nowhere else to turn, strength when I needed it most, and love when I least expected it. You saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself. I promise to stand beside you through whatever life brings, to help build our home and our ranch into something we can be proud of, and to remind you every day that love is worth the risk, even when it seems easier to guard our hearts. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss was both reverent and possessive, a claiming that made several of the ranch hands whoop in approval, and Mrs. Hathaway dab at her eyes with her handkerchief. The celebration afterward, held in the town's small meeting hall, was joyous and relaxed. There was music and dancing, abundant food and drink, and a sense of community that Isaac had forgotten during his years of self-imposed isolation. As the afternoon wore on, he found himself watching Zara as she moved through the crowd, Hope now back in her arms. His wife. His daughter. The words still felt new and somewhat miraculous, like gifts he wasn't entirely sure he deserved but was determined to treasure. She's good for you, a voice said beside him, and Isaac turned to find Jenkins, his foreman of more than a decade, nursing a glass of whiskey. She is, Isaac agreed. Better than I deserve, probably. Jenkins shook his head. Nah, boss. You're a good man who had a bad run of luck. About time things turned around for you. Thanks, Jenkins. Isaac clapped the older man on the shoulder. For sticking with me through the rough years. Not sure the ranch would have survived without you. Nowhere else I'd rather be, Jenkins replied with simple honesty. And now with Miss Zara Mrs. Blackwood, I should say, bringing those books into shape and you focusing more on the horses like she suggested, I reckon we're in for some good years ahead. Isaac nodded, his eyes finding Zara again across the room. I believe we are. Later, as they drove back to the ranch under a sky already filling with early winter stars, Hope slept peacefully between them, exhausted from the day's excitement. Happy, Mrs. Blackwood? Isaac asked, stealing a glance at his wife's profile. Happier than I ever thought possible, Zara replied, her smile visible even in the gathering dusk. And you, Mr. Blackwood? Same, he said simply, reaching across to take her hand. Though I'll be happier still when we're home. The word hung between them, weighted with meaning. Home. No longer just a place, but a feeling, a belonging, a shared future stretching out before them. When they arrived at the ranch, Jenkins and the hands tactfully disappeared to the bunkhouse, while Mrs. Hathaway took charge of Hope, insisting the newlyweds needed time to themselves. I've set up the nursery in the small room next to the main bedroom, she informed them. Hope and I will manage just fine tonight. You two enjoy your wedding night. Zara blushed at the housekeeper's forthright words, but Isaac merely thanked her with a gravity that respected both her assistance and the significance of the night ahead. When they were finally alone, Isaac led Zara to the master bedroom, a room he had not shared with anyone since Sarah's death. He had moved his own things back in the day before, and the space had been thoroughly cleaned and refreshed, with new linens on the bed and a small vase of winter flowers on the dresser. Is this all right? He asked, suddenly uncertain. We could use another room if... Zara silenced him with a kiss, rising on tiptoe to press her lips to his. It's perfect, Isaac. This is our room now. Our beginning. The tension left his shoulders as he gathered her close, his arms encircling her waist. I want to do right by you, Zara. In every way. You already have, she assured him, her hands coming up to frame his face. Now, husband, I believe we have some matters to attend to. Isaac's laugh was low and rich with anticipation. Indeed we do, wife. Indeed we do. Their coming together was both tender and passionate, a culmination of the feelings that had been building between them and a beginning of the physical expression of their love. Isaac was gentle, mindful of Zara's relative inexperience, and the fact that she had given birth only weeks before. But Zara's eagerness matched his own, her responsiveness to his touch stoking the fire between them until they were both consumed by it. Afterward, lying tangled together in the quiet darkness, Isaac traced lazy patterns on Zara's bare shoulder, marveling at the softness of her skin and the rightness of her presence in his bed, in his life. What are you thinking? She asked, her voice drowsy with satisfaction. That I'm the luckiest man in the territory, he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. And that I want to make you as happy as you've made me. Zara nestled closer, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder, as if it had been made for her. You already do. But I'll happily let you spend the rest of our lives trying. As winter gave way to spring, the ranch flourished under their joint care. Following Zara's suggestion, Isaac gradually shifted the focus of the operation more toward horse breeding and training, maintaining just enough cattle to diversify their income. The change proved profitable, with buyers coming from as far as Denver and Santa Fe to purchase Blackwood Ranch horses. Hope grew rapidly, a happy, healthy baby with her mother's sage-green eyes and a determined spirit that Isaac claimed came from both sides. She became the darling of the ranch, with even the most grizzled cowhand melting at her toothless smiles. One evening in late April, as the last of the snow was retreating from the northern pastures, Isaac and Zara sat on the porch, watching the sunset, while Hope slept peacefully in her mother's arms. I had a letter from Mary Jenkins today, Zara mentioned, referring to the doctor's wife who had become a friend. She says the school board is looking for a teacher for the fall term. The current one is moving back east to care for her mother. Isaac glanced at her, noting the careful neutrality of her tone. Are you interested? I've been thinking about it, Zara admitted. I miss teaching. And it would bring in extra income for the ranch. We're doing fine financially, Isaac pointed out. You don't need to work for our sake. I know. But I'd like to if you're amenable. She looked down at Hope, Perhaps Mrs. Hathaway could watch her during school hours. It's only 5 days a week, and I'd be home by mid-afternoon. Isaac considered the idea, trying to separate his own feelings from what would be best for Zara. He'd grown accustomed to having her at the ranch all day, to working side by side on the books in the evenings, to the domestic rhythm they'd established. But he also recognized the intelligence and purpose that had drawn him to her from the beginning. "If it's what you want, then I support it," he finally said. "You're a born teacher, Zara. It seems a shame to waste that talent." Her smile was worth any inconvenience the arrangement might cause. "Thank you. I'll write to Mary tomorrow and express my interest." Isaac nodded, then cleared his throat. "Actually, I've been meaning to discuss something with you as well." "Oh?" Zara turned toward him, curious. "I've been thinking about the future. About hope and—" He hesitated, suddenly uncertain of how to express what had been on his mind. "And?" Zara prompted gently. "And whether you might want more children," he finished in a rush. "With me, I mean. Brothers or sisters for hope." Zara's eyes widened slightly. "Are you asking if I want more children, or telling me you do?" "Both, I suppose." Isaac ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of nervousness. "I never thought I'd want to be a father again after Ellie. But being around Hope, watching her grow, helping raise her, it's awakened something in me I thought was gone for good." "Oh, Isaac." Zara's free hand found his, squeezing gently. "I would love to have more children with you. To see our family grow. I just wasn't sure if you were ready for that." The relief on his face was palpable. "I don't think I'll ever be completely free of the fear of loss," he admitted. "But I don't want that fear to keep us from building the family we both want." Zara leaned over to kiss him, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. "Then we'll face that fear together, and whatever comes, we'll handle it as we have everything else side by side." Isaac's arm came around her shoulders, drawing her against his side. "Side by side," he agreed. "The best way to face anything." They sat in companionable silence as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared, each lost in thoughts of the future they were building together, a future neither could have imagined on that fateful autumn day when a desperate woman stepped off a train and a lonely rancher offered help that would change both their lives forever. As the years passed, Blackwood Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Zara taught at the Clearwater School, becoming a beloved figure in the community while maintaining her role in the ranch's financial management. Isaac's reputation as a horse breeder grew, with Blackwood stock becoming some of the most sought after in the territory. Hope was joined by a brother, Thomas, born a year after Isaac and Zara's wedding, and later by twin girls, Sarah and Elizabeth, named for the family Isaac had lost but now honored through new life rather than grief alone. The ranch expanded, with new pastures added and the main house enlarged to accommodate their growing family. Mrs. Hathaway remained with them until her peaceful passing at the age of 82, by which time Hope was old enough to help care for her younger siblings and assist with household management. Through it all, Isaac and Zara's partnership deepened, their love weathering the inevitable challenges of ranch life, parenthood, and the occasional disagreements that arise between two strong-willed individuals. They faced drought and harsh winters, economic downturns, and the changing landscape of the West as railroads and new settlements altered the world they knew. But they faced it all together, just as they had promised, side by side. On their 25th wedding anniversary, with their children grown or nearly so, Hope married to a neighboring rancher's son, Thomas studying law in Denver, and the twins finishing their last year of school, Isaac and Zara stood once again on the porch of the home they had built together, watching another sunset paint the western sky. "Any regrets, Mrs. Blackwood?" Isaac asked, his hair now fully silver but his eyes as keen as ever. Zara looked up at him, the years having added character to her beauty rather than diminishing it. "Not a single one, Mr. Blackwood." "You?" Isaac shook his head, drawing her close. "Only that I hesitated so long that day at the station. We might have had a few more weeks together if I'd spoken up sooner." Zara laughed, the sound as musical as it had been when he first heard it. "I think we've made good use of the time we've had." "Indeed we have," he agreed, bending to kiss her with a tenderness that had only deepened with the passing years. "And I intend to make good use of whatever time we have left. Is that a promise, Isaac Blackwood?" His smile, rare in those early days but now a familiar sight to all who knew him, spread across his face. "It is, Zara Blackwood. Just as it was the day you asked if I knew what I was getting into, taking in a pregnant stranger abandoned at the station. I said you don't know me," she recalled, her eyes twinkling with the shared memory. "And I said I will," Isaac finished. "The best promise I ever made." As they stood together, silhouetted against the setting sun, the legacy of that promise surrounded them in the thriving ranch, the children they had raised, the community they had helped build, and most of all, in the love that had grown from the most unexpected of beginnings into a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. In the wild expanse of the western frontier, where second chances were rare and happy endings rarer still, Isaac and Zara Blackwood had found both along with a love story that would be told in their family for generations to come.